Nowadays, Sony Pictures Animation is known for their films about monsters at a hotel, food falling from the sky, and sentient emojis. However, like many other computer animation studios, they had humble beginnings before making the leap to feature films. Sony Animation is essentially the animation arm of Sony Pictures' visual effects unit, Sony ImageWorks, as they occupy the same building and use a lot of the same artists. Founded in 1992, their first assignment was doing pre-visualization on the film Striking Distance. However, their first notable effects work was for the famous bus jump in the film Speed. Eventually, more and more employees started being hired as they were given additional films to work on. The first animated film Sony ImageWorks had a hand in was James and the Giant Peach, where they were responsible for the water, the fictional shark, and the seagulls. Sony ImageWorks then created the titular snake in Anaconda, the alien bugs in Starship Troopers, and the cosmic space scenes in Contact. However, when they were doing effects work, ImageWorks had aspirations of making computer animated features, like the folks over at Pixar and Pacific Data Images. They got the chance to prove themselves at handling the CG star of a feature film with Stuart Little. With Stuart, the animators had to create a character who looked like a mouse, but still had a cuddly appearance that would appeal to audiences. They succeeded in that goal wonderfully, and also allowed Stuart to seamlessly interact with real people in a live-action environment. 2002 was a banner year for Sony ImageWorks, and the year that proved to the higher-ups they could make the jump into making animated feature films. With Stuart Little 2, the Sony animators refined Stuart's look and also brought to life Margalo the Canary and the villainous Falcon. And Sony ImageWorks was also given the task of bringing Spider-Man to the big screen and also created CG environments for Spidey to swing around New York. Their biggest accomplishment that year came with the ChubbChubbs, their first animated short. A science fiction cartoon that parodied a number of icons. It was funny and an unexpected delight, and for many the highlight of seeing Men in Black 2. It showed Sony ImageWorks could design and create a whole cast of characters and tell an enjoyable story with great humor. For their efforts, the short won a well-deserved Oscar for Best Animated Short. The success of the ChubbChubbs later led to a second short, Early Bloomer, about a tadpole dealing with becoming a frog before his friends do. This was done as a storyboarding exercise, and these shorts prompted Sony to start Sony Pictures Animation in 2002, and hired former DreamWorks producers Sandra Rabins and Penny Finkelman-Cox to run the unit. The following year, they announced the directors hired to make their slate of projects. Jill Colton and Anthony Stachy were the first directors assigned to a film, Open Season, which eventually became Sony Pictures Animation's first movie. While the reviews were not rosy, as it was seen as lowbrow and uninspired, it was a box office hit. A project that didn't get off the ground for whatever reason was Tam Lin, which is disappointing as it had some great talent involved. A Celtic-inspired folktale, Roger Allers and Brenda Chapman were going to direct, and Neil Gaiman was assigned to write the script. For whatever reason, this film sadly never got made, although I can see how Chapman might have brought some of her ideas and research onto Brave. Sony also wanted to make a full-length animated feature based on the ChubbChubbs, which also never got off the ground. Thankfully, they did manage to make one more short with the property with the ChubbChubbs Save Christmas. Paul and Gaetan Brizzi were also hired to direct 2 films at Sony Pictures Animation, which ended up being finished by other people. Surf's Up was one of them, which was initially revealed as a Romeo and Juliet type story with surfing. Whether this was about penguins at that stage, who knows, but it was Chris Buck and Ash Brannon who ultimately finished the film and made it in the style of the documentary. The effects artists even developed a new camera rig inside the computer to give the film that extra documentary feel, a technique still admired by the animation industry today. In the case of Surf's Up, Sony encountered the opposite of what happened with Open Season. While it was critically acclaimed and an Oscar nominee, it was a flop at the box office. The other promising project the Brizzis were developing? None other than an adaptation of Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. Eventually, a different duo were hired onto the film, named Phil Lord and Christopher Miller, who envisioned the source material as a disaster movie and turned it into a colorful, hilarious, creative, and fast-paced comedy that finally gave Sony Animation both a commercial and critical success. The visual sensibility Lord and Miller gave Cloudy for Chance of Meatballs also allowed the Sony animators to go to new extremes they never went to before. The Jello Mansion was a particularly impressive feat on the artist's part, especially in how they utilized lighting. The things the artists learned on their visual effects assignments and animation projects have continued to be applied on their films, and it's been great seeing them grow over these years. And since then, they continue to create entertaining films based on simple concepts. 25 years after Sony ImageWorks set up shop, they have more than proven themselves as both a great visual effects unit and an animation studio filled with talented artists. Thank you for your work, and here's to a wonderful future. See you next time.